You know, on top of not telling me there are going to be this many people here, I think Sherry is trying to spoil me because someone's recording this. I've heard her blogging about this. It's never happened before.
I'm not good enough to hang on your every word, so don't worry. It's okay.
Well,
I get the highlights.
and that's good enough. It's fantastic to be here. It's terrifying to be here. And how great is it to have great music, a full church, and a lot of love coming from this room. So, thanks for everything. Dearly beloved, grace to you and peace from the Creator, the Redeemer, and the sustaining Spirit. And I can not tell you what a pleasure it is for me to be here today, what a treat it is that Sherry did invite me to share the message today. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. At the church I grew up in about 15 years ago, they decided that what they needed to start was a Wednesday night meal to encourage participation in Wednesday night activities, and also, because there were a lot of people around who needed something to do on Wednesday nights. So on their first night, they planned for about 30 to 50 people. Well, they got 90.
Wow.
Needless to say, the kitchen ran out of food, and the running joke after that was that the church was unable to feed the masses with 2 pans of lasagna and 5 loaves of bread. Unfortunately, there was no multiplication of food. It just didn't happen. But you know what did happen? There were 90 people sitting in a church basement. People who didn't see each other outside of Sunday morning. People who had nothing in common, except that they went to that church. Except that maybe they were doing something that Wednesday night. There was fellowship, there was friendship, there was laughter, and confirmation that this was an idea whose time had come, and that this was an event that the community needed. Similar thing kind of happened in the reading today. Jesus and his disciples, right before the story starts, had just heard that John the Baptist had been beheaded. All right, well, it's a downer. So what did Jesus do? Jesus went away. He's trying to get away from the crowds, away. He's going to mourn. John the Baptist was his friend. His friend had just been executed at a whim. But Jesus, at this time, he already had a following. People said, whoa, Jesus is going someplace? We're there. Okay? They followed, the crowds followed him to that solitary and secluded place. He's not around the town. There's nothing around him. I think some of them, too, are looking to mourn. John the Baptist, he was a big guy. Everyone knew him. From the time he went out in the wilderness, ate locusts and wild honey, they know who this guy is. So they, too, are looking to mourn, to hear what their teacher would tell them. And even in that secluded place, Jesus did what he always did. He taught the crowd. Now, the crowd had come, many of them on the spur of the moment. I think it's kind of like today when you hear about a flash mob. And say, hey, Jesus is over here today, we're going. You get the text message, you're there. 15 minutes, we're all going to stand in this pose. Okay, and the crowd assembles. Or like the secret shows that bands sometimes do. If you don't hear about it by word of mouth, you don't know about it. But once you hear about it, you're there. And Jesus, he was an idea whose time was coming. The people, they were flocking. So there on that lake shore, Jesus taught and taught the crowd. And the crowd grew and grew. And the day was coming to a close, and it was time to eat. But they weren't in a town. There wasn't a tavern. There wasn't an inn. There was a lake shore. There was nothing around. Add to that, it's a flash mob. No one knows what's going on. Everyone just kind of picked up and left. Spur of the moment, no one's grabbing anything. They didn't expect to be gone all day. They didn't expect to be enthralled in that moment. But they all went because there was Jesus. And they all looked to Jesus for a solution. Now, Jesus didn't carry around money. He certainly didn't bring food with him. And it seems that the disciples really didn't have much either. They could have started fishing. That was their job. But they're in a lake. You're trying to feed a lot of people. So when you're feeding 5,000 to 10,000 people, it's a lot of fish. You know, even on a best day, maybe you're going to get that much, but probably not. You know, the only person who planned ahead, according to the story, had brought something. It's 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. I don't know how far that's really going to go. I mean, this is one person who was planning on that, so I maybe 3 or 4 people. I mean, if you're stingy, 10. You know, but as they're there, something happened. The food was passed, and I'm hard-pressed to tell you that Jesus supernaturally caused the food to multiply, because if he did, great, and that's a great story. But what if he did? What if the miracle wasn't about Jesus doing something outside of the realm of possibility, but was about Jesus' message touching the people who were there? The Spirit of Jesus' teaching caused people to be moved. The food was passed, and other people, well, they reached into their pockets and found what they brought. Moving by a generous example, moving by the teachings, there's going to be more than enough if we all put in a little bit. And they started to share what they had. And so it went. 5,000 men plus women and children sat down in a secluded place, sat down on a lake shore, in the midst of grief, seclusion, in immeasurable sadness and surprise. They sat down and they shared a meal. We call that a miracle. It's a miracle of human generosity, as I see it. As the meager food was passed, it was being multiplied. It was being multiplied by each person. You know, it took them a moment. They didn't get it right away, but people never seem to get Jesus right away. It takes them a moment. They need to see an example of someone doing it. So they're reminded of whatever Jesus just taught them. He said, hey, Jesus' greatest message, if we want to go with anything, is love your neighbor as yourself. As you're sitting there right now not sharing your food, you're ignoring that message. You're ignoring the lesson you probably just heard. Someone got it. Someone stood up, and it only took one person. One person stood up and said, here, I've got food. It's not much, but I can share it. We can make this happen. And word spread through the crowd. And everyone else stood up and said, hey, I've got food. Let's pass that around. And in a brief moment, a miracle happened. Food was shared and food multiplied. People understood. Heaven was on earth at that moment. That was the miracle. Because if we read this text literally and Jesus did something supernatural, what do we learn today? How do we relate to that story? That's why I challenge it, because I can't multiply food. If one of you can multiply food, please tell me, because I want you at every party I throw. Because even a miracle, to truly happen, has got to have a helping hand. We see it every Sunday here at the village. Our worship is made possible by a cadre of helpers. We have people who run PowerPoints. We have musicians. We have coffee makers, food preparers, and they all make our experience better, more complete. We jump into the story headlong when we sit down here and begin to pass food. And here we pass spiritual food too, of learning and feeding our soul. And as we pass, we nourish each other. Faith begins the size of a mustard seed, and brothers and sisters, it's growing here today. It's bigger now than it was when we started. That's the Sunday miracle, that people across the country stand up in front of other people and share with them a piece of faith. I pulled a story about 2 fish of knowledge and interpretation. Sherry set bread behind me for communion. And as this day is going on, we worship and everyone else is going to add to the pot. We're going to pull out our contribution. And together, we are going to feed each other. We're feeding, it was going to be 50, but we're feeding like 80 people now. And when we leave here, we're going to go out and we're going to feed more. Because that's what we do. We take our nourishment and we go out and we nourish the world. It is how we even begin to understand how 5,000 plus people could be fed. We are here, as our mission statement says, because we believe we can change the world. Some of us will give money to the village to support our ministries, and some of us will actively participate in that ministry. Some of us will step up, we'll give our time and our talents to the village, and some of us will do it through volunteerism other ways. But that's how on this day, at this moment, right now, we feed our own 5,000. Isn't that something? Isn't that something we can take home to the bank? It's, hey, it may not look like it, but I'm feeding 5,000 people right now. What'd you do today? Just like on a Wednesday in September in St. Paul, Minnesota, when a church decided it needed to offer a fellowship opportunity and food to encourage participation and to feed its church. We have a challenge in front of us now here at the village to grow our ministry, to reach out to our communities. Where can each of us step up? What fish and what bread do we have to offer? Who are we going to offer it to? If everyone adds a little bit to the pot, it won't take long before we're feeding not only Toledo, not only Maumee, Perrysburg, Bowling Green. Sherry says we're a regional church. We've got a lot of cities to go to. But if each of us step up, we can go anywhere. We can change the world. And that is where we meet the story today. Not necessarily with food, but with teaching, with learning, with fellowship. We too sit on that lake shore with Jesus. And we here and now can make miracles happen. Yesterday and today, miracles need a helping hand.
Do you want me to do a little instruction part before you do a little prayer part? We're going to celebrate Holy Communion, and here at the village, when we celebrate communion, everybody is welcome to participate. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to go through any classes first. After Bryan offers the prayers, we invite you to come forward. We'll have you come forward from this side of the commons, and we'll give you a piece of bread which you dip into the cup and then eat it. We call that taking communion by intinction. And we do use grape juice, even though we may refer to it as wine in the prayers, we use grape juice here when we have communion.
On the night when our teacher, Jesus, was taken, he was sitting with his friends and he was having a meal. Before the meal, he took the bread, he broke it, he said, "Take this. Each and every time you meet, share this with each other and know that I am with you." Again, after supper, he took the cup. He said, "Take this and drink, all of you. Feel the Spirit move through you and know that I and the Creator are with you. Come and eat, come and drink. The table is prepared."